Alright, Ralathar checking in here, and this video will be another look into zoophilia. This time more of a number crunching look on the issue, with data gained from a furry survey and the government's estimate of the U.S. population. Now, let me give you a brief overview here. Trying to cut down on the time this takes as much as possible. Brief overview. Alright. Survey. I got this from furcenter.org/pubs/sf_2008.pdf. That is the furry survey. According to that survey, about 17% of furries were zoophiles. About 18% of furries viewed zoophilia positively. But, of course, they were almost entirely composed of zoophiles. The remaining 82% of furries, about half of that remaining percent, a little over half, said that they did not like zoophiles at all. About under half of that remaining percent said that they were ambivalent. They didn't really care one way or another. Take that as you will. Now, we say 17% of furries are zoophiles. That's horrible. I got news for you. This gets scary. The national standard for like zoophilic interests and everything seems to be understood at around 10%, according to to numerous anecdotal studies and such. That's the best number we have to go on. And you know, that's a little bit surprising and a little bit scary. Now, you know, a little note on this. When they say this percentage, they're talking about people interested in it. They're not talking about people who have actually performed it. This goes for furries as well. Because the vast amount of zoophiles haven't actually had any real sexual contact or anything with an animal. In fact, a small percentage of zoophiles just love animals in a completely platonic way. That's a small percentage of them. They prefer to be called animal lovers. But most zoophiles, basically, they visit bestiality sites and everything like that, and they fantasize about it, but they haven't actually done anything. This goes for both furries and normal people. So that's why the number might seem a little high to you. And of course, if you corner people in public, or if you make negative comments, you're going to get lower results than normal. Moving on a little bit here. Alright. So you'd have 10 in 100 people in real life would be a zoophile, and 17 in 100 furries would be a zoophile. Which, you know, means 70% more likely for a furry. I really don't think that's that bad, considering what the fandom is based on. So, you know, take that as you will again. Now, I will note that the studies for normal people actually vary between 10 and 15% zoophiles, but 10% seems to be the largely agreed upon one. Now, getting into some of the meat and bones of all this here. The government estimate of the USA's population from, all I did was, you know, what is the population of USA and Google, and it gave me a CIA.gov site. And from this site, I pulled 303,824,646. Keep in mind that number if you want to number crunch check me. I'm just going to refer to it as 303 million. Now, furry worldwide population is estimated up to 400,000. Now, I'm going to bias this whole thing against furry. I'll tell you what I'm doing as I go along, and I'll summary it at the end what the biases are again to help you keep an idea of the furry versus the furry bias I put in there. In other words, I'm actually making this go against furry because I took a step back and I looked and I realized this was going to be scarier for normal people than for furries. So, the first step of bias. Alright, let's take the highest amount of worldwide furries possible. 400,000. That's the highest estimate we have. So that'll inflate the numbers a little bit. Now, we're going to assume that all of these live in the USA, where we got the census from. In reality, from the English-speaking survey, English only, 70% said they lived in the USA. So we're inflating the numbers for furries, again, versus the numbers of the USA, which will make the furry numbers look worse. Now, going off of these numbers, 10% of the 303 million ends up at about 30 million zoophiles that are normal people in the US alone. But I said, hey, let's be sadistic to the furries again. Make them look bad, right? Let's assume that this number is way too high, and instead jack it down to 1%. So instead of 30 million people that are normal being zoophiles, we have 3 million people. Alright, now let's be mean against the furries again. We don't like furries. Slap them around a little bit, right? So instead of assuming the 17% we got from the survey, let's jack that up to 20%. Makes the math easier anyways, right? That would mean that there are 80,000 zoophiles that are furry. Now, little number crunch here. 3 million divided by the 80,000. 3 million is just easier to say. It's actually 3,038,246 divided by 80,000 furries. And you get, out of that zoophiles, 2.63% of zoophiles are furry. That's a very, very small percentage. And this is already sadistically biased against furries. So, you know, compared to the zoophile population, we are a drop in the bucket, man.